The key turned in the lock with a satisfying click, but the sound that greeted me inside our newly built home was anything but. There, in the middle of our living room, stood Derek, my husband of 3 years, his arms folded and a smirk playing on his lips. "This house is mine, Evelyn. I'm going to live here with my parents. If you don't like it, you can leave," he said, his voice cold and devoid of the warmth I once knew. For a moment, I stood frozen, the words ricocheting in my mind. "What are you talking about, Derek?" My voice barely rose above a whisper, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. He thrust a business card into my hand, a divorce attorney. "I thought you might need this," he said, his smugness sending waves of nausea through me. The room spun, and I clutched at the marble countertop for support. "Why are you doing this?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling. Derek shrugged, his indifference slicing through my heart. "You never really fit in with us, Evelyn. It's better this way." I remembered the countless times I had tried to blend in with his family, to be part of his world. The way his mother would scrutinize my every move, the snide remarks, the way his father would ignore me. It was all a game to them, and I was the unwitting pawn. "You said we were a team," I accused, my voice gaining strength. Derek laughed, a hollow sound that echoed off the walls. "We were, until I didn't need you anymore." The realization hit me like a physical blow. I had been a means to an end, a stepping stone for him to achieve his dream home. All the love, the sacrifices, the dreams we shared, they meant nothing to him. I felt a rage building inside me, a fire that consumed the hurt and shock. "You won't get away with this," I vowed, my eyes locked on his. Derek's smirk faltered, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. "What can you possibly do, Evelyn?" "You'll see," I said, my voice steady now. "Karma has a way of coming back around." I turned and walked out of the house, the card crumpled in my fist. As I stepped into the sunlight, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. I was free from his manipulative grasp, and I was going to make sure he regretted every hurtful word, every deceitful action. I didn't know how or when, but I knew one thing for certain. Derek was going to pay for what he had done. And I was going to be the one to collect. The coffee shop was bustling with activity, but I sat in a quiet corner, a cup of untouched latte growing cold in front of me. Memories flooded back, each one a sharp jab to my heart. 3 years ago, I met Derek at a mutual friend's party. He was charming, a bit awkward, and seemingly genuine. We clicked over our shared love for classic rock and Italian cuisine. I remember thinking, here's a man who understands the value of family and simplicity. But as our relationship progressed, so did the unveiling of his true colors. Living together brought the real Derek into light. The man who would leave his dirty laundry scattered across our bedroom for days, who shrugged off basic hygiene with an alarming nonchalance. "Evelyn, why make such a fuss? It's just clothes," he would say, brushing off my concerns. His habits grated on me, but it was his dismissive attitude that hurt the most. He never valued my comfort, always prioritizing his convenience over our harmony. And every time I tried to address it, he'd deflect. My mom never complained about doing these things for me. Visits to Derek's parents' house were a revelation. His father, a mirror image of Derek in his disregard for others, would casually intrude into spaces without a thought. "What's the big deal?" He'd chuckle when I expressed my discomfort. His mother, a seemingly gentle soul, always rushed to clean up after the men, her actions reinforcing their behavior. In that household, Derek's habits weren't flaws, they were norms. I clung to the hope that love would smooth out these rough edges. But as time passed, my hope turned to disillusionment. The man I fell in love with was a facade, and beneath it was someone who cared for nothing but his own desires. The stark contrast between the Derek I knew and the one I lived with was jarring. I felt deceived, trapped in a relationship that was more a convenience for him than a partnership. "You're always making a big deal out of nothing, Evelyn," Derek would say during our arguments, his words laced with disdain. And now, his ultimate betrayal, the house that was meant to be our dream, our future, was just another chess piece in his selfish game. A fire ignited within me, fueled by every belittling comment, every dismissive gesture. Derek had shown his true self, and it was time for me to show mine. He thought he could discard me like one of his dirty shirts, but I wasn't going to be tossed aside so easily. I was going to fight back, not just for me, but for every moment I spent believing in a lie. I stood up, leaving the cold latte behind. It was time to plot my next move, to turn the tables on Derek. He thought he had won, but the game had just begun. I stood outside the small but cozy space that was now my nail salon. The sign above the door read Evelyn's Elegance, a name that symbolized a fresh start. This was more than a business. It was a declaration of my newfound independence. The early days were tough. I worked tirelessly, my hands often aching from the meticulous artistry my job demanded. But with each stroke of polish, each satisfied customer, I rebuilt the confidence Derek had tried to shatter. "Your work is incredible, Evelyn," one of my regulars, Mrs. Thompson, said one day. "You've got a real gift." Her words were a balm to my weary soul. I had started from scratch, with nothing but my skills and determination. Derek thought he had left me with nothing, but he was wrong. He had underestimated my resilience. As my business grew, so did my resolve. I wasn't just going to survive, I was going to thrive. And part of that meant ensuring Derek got what he deserved. One evening, as I balanced my books, I smiled at the numbers. My salon was not just surviving, it was prospering. I was nearing my goal of financial independence, a stark contrast to the life Derek must be leading. I remembered his arrogance, his smug face as he handed me the divorce attorney's card. He thought he had secured his future with that house. Little did he know, the financial noose was tightening around his neck. I had heard through mutual friends that Derek was struggling. The mortgage payments were higher than he anticipated, and his parents, far from the financial safety net he expected, were an additional burden. A plan began to form in my mind. Derek had always been terrible with money, relying on others to bail him out. But this time, there would be no rescue. I was going to make sure of that. As I polished the nails of my next client, a mischievous smile played on my lips. "Everything all right, Evelyn?" the client asked. "Better than all right," I replied. "I'm just enjoying the thought of karma in action." In my mind, I pictured Derek, floundering under the weight of his decisions, his dreams crumbling like the walls of the house he had stolen from me. But this was just the beginning. I wasn't going to sit back and watch. I was going to be the architect of his downfall, and every step of his descent would be a step up for me. He had built his house on lies and deceit. It was only a matter of time before it all came tumbling down. And I, Evelyn, would be there to witness it. My hands clean, my conscience clear. The ringing of my phone broke the silence of the evening. I glanced at the caller ID. It was Derek. A sense of satisfaction washed over me. This was the moment I had been preparing for. "Hello, Derek," I said, my voice calm and composed. "Evelyn, you need to help me," he blurted out, his voice laced with panic. The desperation in his tone was music to my ears. "Why would I help you?" I asked, feigning ignorance. "It's the house, Evelyn. I can't afford the mortgage, and the bank is threatening foreclosure." I almost laughed at the irony. Derek, who had once flaunted his control and financial stability, was now at the mercy of his own poor decisions. "You were always so confident in your finances, Derek. What happened?" I prodded, unable to resist the urge to twist the knife a little deeper. I underestimated the costs, and my parents, they're draining me. I can't keep up with everything." I could picture him now, the once arrogant man, crumbling under the weight of reality. "That sounds like a tough situation," I replied, my voice dripping with feigned sympathy. "Evelyn, please, you were always the one who managed our finances better. I need you. I need your help." His plea was pathetic, and it filled me with a sense of power. This was the man who had thought he could discard me like yesterday's news. Now he was begging for my help. "Derek, you made your choice," I said firmly. "You chose that house over our marriage. You chose your comfort over our partnership. Why should I bail you out now?" There was a pause on the line, and I could almost hear the cogs turning in his head, trying to come up with a convincing argument. "I'll do anything, Evelyn. Please, I'm begging you." The word begging resonated in the air, a sweet vindication of all the hurt and betrayal he had caused me. "I'm sorry, Derek, you're on your own this time. Maybe it's time you learned to clean up your own mess," I said, a smirk forming on my lips. I hung up the phone before he could respond. A wave of exhilaration rushed through me. Derek was finally getting a taste of the consequences of his actions, and I had front row seats to the show. As I sat there, basking in the glow of my small victory, I knew this was only the beginning. Derek's downfall was inevitable, and I was going to make sure he felt every bit of the pain he had inflicted on me. His house of cards was falling, and I wasn't going to lift a finger to stop it. After all, karma has a way of coming back around, and for Derek, it was only just beginning. The morning sun cast a warm glow over the thriving salon, now buzzing with activity. As I prepared for my first client of the day, a familiar face appeared at the door. It was Derek, looking disheveled and desperate, a stark contrast to the confident man he once was. "Evelyn, we need to talk," he said, his voice lacking the arrogance I remembered. "This isn't a good time, Derek. I have clients," I replied, not bothering to hide my indifference. "It's about the house. I'm losing it, Evelyn. I've got nowhere to go. The bank is taking everything." I paused, taking in the sight of him. This was the man who thought he could cast me aside, who believed he could control everything and everyone around him. Now he was crumbling before my eyes. "Derek, you made your bed. Now you have to lie in it," I said, my words deliberate and cold. "But I thought you might." "What? Come to your rescue after everything you've done?" I cut him off. The satisfaction of seeing him like this was indescribable. He took a step forward, desperation clear in his eyes. "Evelyn, please, I was wrong. I see that now. I need you." I looked at him, really looked at him. This was the man I had once loved, the man I had built dreams with, and he had betrayed me without a second thought. "No, Derek, you don't need me. You need to take responsibility for your actions. You need to face the consequences of your choices." I could see the realization dawning on him, the understanding that there was no way out, that he had reached the end of the road. "I'm sorry, Evelyn. Truly, I am." His apology was too little, too late. I had moved on, built a life that was mine and mine alone, a life where he had no place. "Goodbye, Derek. I wish you the best, but this is where our paths diverge for good." He stood there for a moment, looking lost and broken. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. As the door closed behind him, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had faced my past, and I had come out stronger. Derek's downfall was his own doing, and I had played my part in it, but it was time to let go, to focus on the future. I turned back to my clients, a smile on my face. I was Evelyn, owner of a successful salon, a woman who had overcome betrayal and emerged victorious. My past with Derek was just that, the past. My future was bright, and it was all mine. The salon was closed for the day, and I sat alone, reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The walls, once bare, now adorned with accolades and tokens of appreciation from clients, were a testament to my hard work and resilience. A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. I hesitated, then stood to answer it. To my surprise, it was Mrs. Gardner, Derek's mother. "Evelyn, may I come in?" Her voice was timid, a stark contrast to the domineering woman I remembered. I nodded, curiosity piqued. "Of course, Mrs. Gardner. What brings you here?" She took a seat, her hands wringing in her lap. "I wanted to apologize, Evelyn, for everything." Her words took me aback. This was the woman who had sided with Derek, who had berated me for not conforming to their way of life. "Why now?" I asked, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside me. She sighed, a look of defeat in her eyes. "Since you left, everything has fallen apart. Derek lost the house and we're struggling to make ends meet. I see now how wrong we were, how we treated you." There was a part of me that wanted to relish in her misery, to savor the taste of vindication. But looking at her, a broken woman, I realized that my victory lay not in their downfall, but in my own rise. "Mrs. Gardner, I've moved on from that part of my life. What happened with Derek was unfortunate, but it led me to where I am today." She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, truly sorry. You didn't deserve any of it." I offered her a small smile. "Thank you for saying that. I hope things get better for you and your family." As she left, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. The chapter of my life that included Derek and his family was officially closed. I turned to gaze at my salon, my sanctuary. It was more than a business. It was a symbol of my strength, my independence, and my ability to overcome adversity. I had not only survived Derek's betrayal, I had thrived, and in doing so I had learned the most valuable lesson of all, that the best revenge is living well, and living well was exactly what I intended to do.